what can we do? What are activities we can do? We've had actually this question from people with different age kids. So we had one with a 1.5-year-old, 1.5-year-old asking, how can I encourage self-play? How can I, what activities can I do with somebody who needs a lot of attention at 1.5? And we've also had people with tweens, 9, 10, 11, saying, how can I get these kids some release, some energy release, and keep them busy because they've got a whole different energy level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, there's a lot there. When it comes to independent play, there's a system that I teach parents that really is relevant at every single age. And it basically comes down to, and I mentioned I have kind of a sheet that breaks this down that I can share maybe in the comments later.
That'd be great.
Uh,
We'd love that.
yeah, but basically what it comes down to is the fact that if you have ever had the experience of developing the ability to spend time alone with yourself, like that can be something that's uncomfortable for adults, right? Like if you're somebody who's extroverted, especially, it can be really hard to be alone with yourself, right? It can be uncomfortable, and at first you don't really know what to do. But then a lot of the time, what happens is if you start really focusing on that as a practice, is you start to really love it and you start to learn like, oh, I love to journal, or I love to take walks, or whatever it is you find in that time. And so the same thing actually goes for children. So when children are used to being constantly stimulated, it's uncomfortable for them to be left alone, right? They don't know what to do with themselves at first. And so there can be some pushback there. But the most important thing is that it's okay for them to have that, because independent play is actually really great for children's development of their imagination and their personalities, and has so many benefits. And um, so the way to do it is basically in increments. So start with 10 minutes. So even if your child is 1.5, put them in a little area that's safe, maybe a little playpen for 10 minutes, set a timer. If they fuss, come over and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Right now it's time for you to play by yourself. I'm over here working. I'll be back. And kind of keep checking in with them. And then each day you can increase that time a little more and a little more. And so with older kids, a lot of the time what happens is that they'll tell you they're bored, or they don't want to do it, or they don't like it, or they'll whine and things like that. And so rather than resisting them, you just say, oh, I know this is hard. I know you're bored, but if you're bored, you can just sit in your room and do nothing. It's just 20 minutes. That's okay. And I'll be back in 20 minutes, and then when you come in 20 minutes, if they're like, that was terrible, and, I didn't do anything, be like, oh man, I'm sorry, but you did so great. You stayed in your room. And then what happens is over time, they find their play and they find their ability to entertain themselves, and they start to develop that comfort level in that space. So it's a
Huh.
process. So that's not like, it's not going to happen overnight, but a week from now, your child could be playing for half an hour alone if you really work on that every single day consistently.
Okay, you're definitely gonna have to post that sheet, and I think you'll have a lot of people wanting to learn more because that's huge. Quick question on that: can you start with a kid less than 1.5 or no?
You can. The piece